Kahed Mihafalcha. Welcome everyone, my name is Darren Kuzma and this is Mind the CRAIC, a webinar that we are doing for life improvement tools or life hacks and showing you how you can survive and do better in life and achieve your goals and your aims. So to that point, the current series of webinars that we are doing are on the subject of motivation. Having just finished a series on study and learning, we've now moved into this subject of motivation. So before I get started, I just want to head over to Zoom. I'm live here on a Zoom chat, and for any of you that are following me on Zoom, if you can give me thumbs up or waves, anything like that. If you know how to operate Zoom, you've got at the bottom or at the top of your window options for chat or reactions or different icons you can see there, so you can keep track with me as we go along and I can get your originations or any questions that you may have. And it is that reason that we are doing it in a webinar format and not as simply online video for you to consume, because it is my firm belief that when you get new information and you compare it to the past experience that you have had, you can look at how your experience and what has worked for you or what hasn't worked can fit with or clash with what you have found successful already. Because as L. Ron Hubbard said, what is true is what's true for you. So the reason for the webinar is to compare. You can originate, you can send across to me things that you have tried on the subject, things that you have done, and then compare the information that I'm presenting here so that you can see what use it could be for you. Okay, so if you're watching also on the other platforms, Facebook, Instagram, or even YouTube, there is a host, Michelle, with me today, who is on the other platform. So if you put in the comment section anything like a comment, or you give a thumbs up or anything like that, just to acknowledge if I ask you that you got what I said or you have any questions, you can put that into those comment sections there within that platform, and then Michelle will put them over here on Zoom for me to take up. Okay, good. So today's subject, today's topic within motivation is, can you be happy without a goal? So we're looking at happiness and goals and the relationship of those two things. Okay, so the content is based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard, and the subject of motivation or personal drive or survival, which some of these things I will define, and you'll see as we are going over the material how they relate to motivation. There is such a vast body of knowledge on these things, and you can even see that that's not true only of Scientology. You can see that even if you go across to the internet and you put in that word, you'll have such a volume of content on that subject that you will be overwhelmed. There will be too many things for you to read. You won't know exactly which way to go. So what I'm doing within these webinars is I'm choosing some particular points that I feel deserve highlighting so that you can get the most value out of a short exposure, and then see from that the logic and the genius of everything that's been put together by L. Ron Hubbard, so that then you can go a bit further and perhaps take up reading one of the books. I've got many different resources here that I'm going to discuss in the different webinars, but something so that you will find interest to then go further, because there really is a lot to learn and a lot that you can do to improve your motivation. Okay, so let's get started. So what do I have to do with motivation myself? What is my experience? Well, I have been helping people for many years as a professional. I went to university for 5 years and I did a lot of postgraduate training, and my basic purpose in life has been to help people. Now, not specifically with the point of motivation, but motivation is always a key factor within getting someone to improve their lives or repair their lives. They have to do something usually. Very, very few times is there a thing that a person receives where they're just passive. And there are two types of care, you could say. There's active care and there's passive care. Passive care is where the person is just laying there or sitting there or being there and they're receiving something and they're not actually participating in a great way. And then you have active care where the person is being directed to do something, and by them being directed to do it, they are active in making the improvement, the repair, or the care, making it work. So my experiences across the decades with motivation, even though I'm not the most motivated person I know how to get motivated. I know the pitfalls. because for many years, more than 2 decades of my life, I spent of my active life without my thumb in my mouth, but many years without the knowledge of Scientology, and then many years with it. And I can definitely say having the tools and the knowledge within Scientology have made things much more easy and much more logical in a way of approach than the mishmash and the complete perplexing labyrinth of all the different ideas that there are out there. And I say that there is such a huge body of confusion out there. Within Scientology, the body of data is aligned, it's codified, it's been put in sequence, it's been put in topics that relate to each other, and how their relationship is with each other is very clearly defined. And it's for that reason that I really think that the subject of motivation is very clearly understood through the works of Orrin Hubbard. Okay, so let me get started, and we're going to look first of all, mostly this webinar, we're going to deal with a lot of definitions. And that is incredibly important because when you look at a subject that you don't understand, or you don't understand the information of it, if you lack the basic definitions, you lack a stable point from which to orient all other new pieces of information. And without a definition of a new piece of information, you can't relate those two things quite clearly to each other. You can have an idea or you can make something up, but you don't know whether or not you're actually hitting at the original intended idea of those two things. As a comment, one of the reasons why you get such a confusion of all these different subjects, and someone calling something mini habits, and someone calling something a 5-second change, or the 5-second rule, or this rule, the same concepts you will see are presented over and over and over in different ways with different words, but it's essentially the same thing, is because each of those subjects hasn't understood or defined really some base point of that subject and how their subject relates to that. Whereas within Scientology, with all the definitions known and understood, the information becomes aligned, and it makes it much easier for you to think around. So, for that reason, we're going to concentrate quite a lot on some definitions today, so that you have them aligned properly in your mind, and hopefully you're having a lot of cognitions and realizations about perhaps what you've been doing wrong, or if you've already been following the topic of motivation, to realize that the information you have on motivation needs to be aligned, and it can be aligned through defining and getting things clearly understood. And so here we go. First definition, since the topic is can you be happy without a goal, first definition we're going to look at is definition of happiness. Okay, from the Oxford Dictionary, this says feeling or showing pleasure or contentment. So it's a feeling, it's an emotion, it is a showing or a display of pleasure or contentment. So if you give someone a gift and they have a smile on their face and they're very like, oh, I can't wait to open it, whatever it might be, that happiness, that expression of pleasure, usually achieved by or expressed by a smile, usually some sort of motion potentially. That is the definition in the Oxford Dictionary of happiness. Okay, so it gives an example sentence. Melissa came in looking happy and excited. So looking, displaying, showing the visual things that tell you that someone is happy. And okay, good. So we're going to move on from there. The next definition I'm going to give you is a more, I'm going to say, comprehensive definition, and this is a definition that comes from Orrin Hubbard. Okay. The overcoming of not unknown obstacles toward a known goal. Okay, it's just the first sentence, I'm going to break that down. So, to overcome is to surpass, is to beat, is to best, is to achieve, or destroy the thing that was stopping you, slowing you, or putting some sort of small barrier up or large barrier. You overcame it. You took it over. You beat that thing. So the overcoming of not unknown. So they're not things that you didn't know of, because if you didn't know of them and you overcame them, then you couldn't really get a sense of having done something, because you just went straight over it. So it wasn't unknown, it was therefore known. So the overcoming of not unknown obstacles, so obstacles, things that get in your way, And in your way being, if you want to go from where you are to somewhere else, you can just consider that's the point that I want to get to. I'm going to go from here to here. Something that is in that pathway, in that road toward that thing you want to get to. The overcoming of unknown obstacles toward a known goal. Now, the important word goal there, we're going to define a little bit further. But first, let me continue with happiness. Happiness is not the goal. I'll give it to you again. Happiness is not the goal. It is the act of reaching toward and progressing toward the goal. It lies, for the briefest instant, in contemplating the accomplished. Okay, so let's look at some perhaps examples of those things that you've seen there. It is the act of reaching toward and progressing toward the goal. So here is my task. Maybe it is something that these days almost everyone has, is a phone, okay? And everyone wants a phone. I know myself, I'm about to get a new phone, it's probably why it's in my mind, right? So here it is. So there's a goal, there's a phone, right? It's the act of reaching toward it. So even the reaching, the looking, or the searching for the different types of phone, that is going to give me some happiness. Because it's helping me progress toward the goal of actually getting a phone. You know, it's not that you just walk in and just a phone suddenly appears, or you walk into a shop and you just point to that one. That can happen, but still, in this full definition, it is the act of reaching toward and progressing toward the goal. It lies, for the briefest instant, in contemplating the accomplished. So, have you ever found yourself daydreaming or thinking of things that you achieved in the past, or even telling stories about something that you did, something that you achieved? You know, you'll probably find that the greater things, or the things that you were proud of, or the things that you did that you liked, you will find yourself, when you recall those stories or recount them to another, that you'll generally feel happy. You will be overcome by an emotional state or a feeling of happiness. Okay, further in this definition, it lies for a brief time in contemplating what is to be accomplished before beginning upon it. So this is the realm really of your own mind, and in many ways how dreaming can actually bring about happiness. The contemplating in your mind, so thinking about something to be accomplished before beginning it. So even before you start out, even though part of the definition does include reaching toward and progressing towards a goal, but even just the contemplating before you're beginning upon it can bring about happiness. And I'm sure many of you that are in the mood, or you have the aim to do something, or you were interested in motivation because you want to do something, you've already experienced that little bit of happiness, or that maybe it's a wishing sort of state, or I really want this, or you're longing for something, or you're desiring something, and just that simple act of wanting or desiring something brings about a little bit of happiness, because it starts dreams and ideas of what could be, hope in a way it could be. Okay. So, finishing the definition, the main body of it lies in the field of active endeavor. So, the main body. So, yes, the contemplation part can be part of it, and it certainly can make you happy, as I explained, but the main body of it lies in the field of active endeavor. So, the actual doing, the making of actions toward a goal is the main part of it. So, I'm going to just give you that whole definition again so you can hear that in full without any interruptions. The overcoming of not unknown obstacles toward a known goal. Happiness is not the goal. It is the act of reaching toward and progressing toward the goal. It lies, for the briefest instant, in the contemplating the accomplished. It lies for a brief time in contemplating what is to be accomplished before beginning upon it. The main body of it lies in the field of active endeavor. Okay, so you'll see that's very comprehensive. And I will say that this book here, The Way to Happiness, A Common Sense Guide to Better Living, is actually contains precepts, non-religious in nature, that are based on virtues and moral values And it even covers such things as ambition and having goals and your obligations and how they relate to your happiness. So as a fantastic starting point, because you probably have experienced that just feeling happy will help you be more motivated, the relationship of happiness to goals is certainly very, very appropriate. And you can see how they're linked from that definition, okay? Because in order to be happy, yes, you can just contemplate things, but the main body of it lies in actively pursuing or taking actions towards some sort of goal. Okay, so let's look at that. Give you an example to make this a little bit more real. So I was talking about the phone just before. So think of it this way, because this happiness lies in the field of active endeavor and not necessarily just in your mind. Imagine being given a phone or a toy or something like that, and then all you were able to do is just have that thing. You weren't able to do anything with it, so you were just able to have it. And you could keep it in the box, and you could keep it on your shelf, or you could keep it somewhere. It's yours to have, but you can't do anything with it. You wouldn't be so happy, right? Because happiness, again, is in that field of active endeavor. So when you get a phone, you think about, ooh, this is going to enable me to do certain things. I can, have all these apps that I like on, whether it's the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, whatever it might be. So the doingness that object represents is what fuels the happiness, because it then starts to, oh, I got this thing. You automatically start contemplating the actions that you can do. You might start using it and see, oh, I can use these types of emojis, or it has this best sort of keyboard, or the camera on this thing is fantastic. And automatically that contemplation goes into what you can do with it, and then the happiness is continued through the continuing or the accomplishing of whatever goals that you might have from the use of that phone. Now you might say, well, girls are happy when they get a diamond necklace, or they get some nice flowers and that sort of thing, but still that has a doingness associated with it. And there can be pleasure in using the senses. Receiving things in the senses is still something that is done. So this point of happiness definitely relates to what you do with things. Now, perhaps one of the narrow bands of things that people might receive that they really do regard in that just simply lookingness that could really be just in the mind might be in the area of black market arts collection. So they can't really show it to anyone if someone has obtained a piece of art that is stolen. They're the only person that can see it. They can't show it off perhaps broadly to their greater friends, because people might know that exotic piece of art has actually been stolen, or, in some way is illegal. So that person, though, to get happiness from that or to desire that, may be contemplating in their mind or understand for themselves, oh, I possess that, no one else does. But you can be sure that there's probably still some other people that they use that piece of art to tell the story to get a reaction from other people. So really, this whole idea of happiness and how it is related to motion and action isn't just in the mind. It usually is associated with other things. So hopefully that example makes sense. And then perhaps compare the absurdity of it with, okay, so if we're really saying that just having something and looking at it alone would bring people happiness, there are very few circumstances where that fits, because, like I said, with the black market arts dealer, because you couldn't imagine a situation where you go to your auntie's house and she takes you down to the basement or up into the attic, and she then opens the door and she shows you all these pictures in crayon that she has stolen from the school when she went to her son and daughter's parent-teacher interviews. It just wouldn't happen in that way, because having something and possessing something and keeping it locked away just to look at, or just to know that you have it in that way, is not something that generally creates happiness. So receiving things always then results for happiness to follow in the fact that you're doing something with it. And that's why that definition there, from my point of view, has the main body of it, happiness, lies in the field of active endeavor. Okay, so now what are we getting active towards? Well, we're getting active towards, of course, a goal. So let's look at some definitions of the word goal. Before I go on, though, let me just check over with Michelle, who is hosting all the other platforms, and if you're here with me on Zoom, if you have any questions or any comments, or you'd like me to repeat anything, I know that that was a pretty comprehensive and intense definition, and I will say one thing, that wasn't even all of it. There are some other nuances to that definition, or additions to that definition, that L. Ron Hubbard has related that to other subjects, especially emotion and action. And I can perhaps leave that for another webinar, because I want to take it like not at such an intense level. But if you got everything with that definition, please send some thumbs up. Give me some acknowledgements there just to let me know that you're following so far. But if you had any questions, even just send a question mark through to Michelle so that then she can know that perhaps I need to explain something else. Okay, let's go ahead with goals. Okay, so we have the definition of a goal from the Oxford Dictionary. Let's have a look. The destination of a journey. So the end point, the place you are destined to reach, the end point of a journey. So you're traveling somewhere, you're making motion with the body, either it's a walking, it could be a journey for as small from your bedroom to the kitchen. The destination is the kitchen. So that would be a goal per that definition there. We can also say, I've got a definition here from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Let's look at some of these here. The end toward which effort is directed. So you see with these two definitions here, we're looking at an end point, a thing that ends up, that it perhaps is a location, or it is a possessing of something, or it is a doing of something. So we could look at these different states of existence as being something, doing something, or having something. And these are the 3 points that L. Ron Hubbard goes over in the Fundamentals of Thought, which is related to goals, of course. You know, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? So, again, I'll give you that definition from Merriam-Webster. The end toward which effort is directed. Now, you see in both those definitions from Merriam and Oxford, we're looking at the destination of a journey, and journey implies there's been action, there's been motion, moving your body somewhere, even if it's just to the kitchen. Effort being some directed force. Okay, so there is force that is going to push or move something or alter something from the position that it is in to another position, change it from a state of moving to not moving even, or not moving to moving, or moving and then moving in a different direction. So when there is effort directed at something that is aimed at achieving a certain end point, that is what a goal is. Okay, so that's from the dictionary. Let's have a look then at any further clarification or agreement we can get. What did L. Ron Hubbard have to say about goal? He said, a known objective toward which actions are directed with the purpose of achieving that end. Okay, so it's pretty much the same as the other ones, but I will tell you that the subject of goals as it relates to problems, the subject of goals as it relates to what are your goals, and what are really not your goals, but the goals that have been given to you by someone else, the goals that have been forced upon you by someone else, and the goals that you reactively or with some sort of illogic decided to possess just so that you could oppose someone else. That subject of goals and all of those side subjects and the type of things that I just spoke about, L. Ron Hubbard spent many years researching these and how that actually applied to someone's life, how their life gets directed, what meaning they have in their life, and indeed how their mind actually works. So the subject of goals is a very, very large body of knowledge in Scientology. So again, that gives you a little bit more of an idea why I say I'm going to highlight some of these definitions, because they are very, very important. Okay, so now we've got this whole idea of a goal being something that's an endpoint. Let's say it's a beingness, a doingness, a havingness, in that way that action or some activity is directed towards, some effort or some force is put toward that particular thing. So, can you think of any examples of goals? We might have short-term goals, we might have long-term goals. If you have any goals that you'd like to share, you can put them in the chat here so that I can see them. You can leave them in the comment section. I'd like to hear from you. What are your current goals? And then I want to have a look at that definition that I just gave you of happiness. So we've got goals, and now compare that definition of happiness to what you're currently doing? Are you, and as the definition says here, experiencing, pleasure or contentment or something as you are reaching toward and progressing toward that goal? Are you contemplating its accomplishment and getting pleasure from that? Or is there a goal that you haven't even embarked upon, but you're getting your thinking about it is giving you some sort of pleasurable feeling or contentment? Okay, so looking at those goals, the reason that I say that and put it in that context is because if you find that the goal is actually achieving those things for you, we might find that the goal is a little bit more likely, or actually a lot more likely, to be one of your own goals. If a goal doesn't necessarily make you happy in those ways, it actually makes someone else happy, then perhaps you could be looking at, where does that goal come from? And that does relate to motivation, of course. It's like, how motivated are you to achieve that goal? Now, when we come back to goals for a second, so that's something for yourself to ask yourself, the relationship between happiness and goals. Assess your own goals in that regard. Go back and have a listen to that definition again if you would like to. All right, so when we look at most basic goals, it was discovered by L. Ron Hubbard quite a long time ago that the lowest common denominator to existence was the urge to survive. All life forms are driven by survival. Now, that's not to say that all attempts to survive end up successfully, because for some of them don't. But if we examine most broadly, we will find that all life is attempting to survive. So, if we say that that is the most common denominator, the lowest common denominator, the thing that all life is attempting to do, survive meaning to persist, to continue living, to continue existing, with the ultimate being to continue existing for as long as possible. Okay, so we'll say that this base goal of survival exists in all living creatures, okay, and all of life, really. Now, therefore, all goals are sort of subservient to the goal to survive. And let's take a look at it from this point of view. So the survive is an urge, an impulse, a drive for you to survive. And then take a look at what it is that you're trying to do in terms of survival. Are those goals that you're trying to achieve improving your own survival? And we could look at it this way. Motivation has a connotation of, in a good way, that when you're motivated to do something, that you're looking at doing something good, productive, something that is helpful in some way. So motivation has this idea that when you're motivated, you're going to do something good. That's in general. That's very grossly sort of speaking. So motivated to do something good would align with survival. So goals that align with survival of yourself, or survival with the most parts of life possible, if we looked at things on a spectrum, being the most good or the least good, that goals that progress yourself, and others and all other parts of life towards longer and longer survival would therefore form goals that are higher, perhaps on a scale of motivation, or higher in a motivation-inducing level. And if you examine that a little bit in life, you might see that the survival of yourself doesn't feel perhaps as good or motivating or producing of even happiness as when you're actually involving not only yourself, but your family, your immediate social groups, perhaps your community, maybe even your country, or maybe even, mankind. And you'll see that works out pretty well in terms of value anyway in society, because people that receive awards for different things, people that get acknowledged and certain achievements, that the more someone does good for the greater definition of life, the more it is acknowledged as being a good thing. So just as a hint in terms of what goals should you set, I told you to take a look at your own happiness, the definition of happiness as it applies to your current goals. Then, in terms of goals, we know goals, one of the most basic goals is survival. So how do your goals align with your survival? How do your goals align with not only your survival, but the survival of the many different areas of life? So I'm going to go over some of those different subsections of life in a later webinar. But the reason that I bring those things up in that way, and I have talked about this in the study webinar, when you get a piece of information like a goal or the definition of a goal, the definition of happiness, looking at how you can apply that to your life is a very, very important point. And I think that drill or that activity that I gave you just to start with is something that I would like you to go off and try right now. So just go with the goals that you already have, okay? Perhaps only start with 5. Don't put a whole list down and get involved in like a full half an hour or 20 minute thinking of all the different things you want to do. Just maybe 5 things that are immediately at your mind, and assess them across those definitions of happiness and the definition of a goal as it relates to survival, and survival not just of yourself, but of all the areas of life around you. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your community or your school or the club that you're involved in, or maybe it's all of mankind, or maybe it's all of life, in whichever sort of frame. So looking at how some information can apply to you and how you could use it will then start to increase your flexibility of thinking. And so when you're starting to put down your goals, you've got now some frames to quantify the quality of that goal for yourself. Which one is the more important one? Or which one is going to create happiness? Which one is going to create more survival for myself? Which one is going to create more survival for not just me, but my family? Which one is going to create survival for not just me, my family, but perhaps my social group, my workplace, etc., etc. So looking across your goals and assessing it from that point of view can certainly establish a little bit more value, or allow you to relate the goals to each other in some way. And that itself can be something, when you see the sense and you see the logic in what is motivating you to do that goal, it can then add fuel to the fire, because you can see that it not only helps yourself, but it helps so much more in terms of survival and happiness. Okay, so I've given you a couple of definitions there, basically, happiness and goal, and we've related that to survival. So I'm just going to check in with Michelle and ask if we have any questions there. And if any of you have any questions on what I just went over, or you want me to clarify something, then please do. I am going to continue this subject of goals a little bit further, because there are some different words that we could define goals by. And you could say there's minor goals, medium goals, or major goals, but there are also some other words that we could use that will clarify for you which ones are goals and which ones are mini goals, or we could use the word targets. And having those words defined for yourself often helps you mentally break down a problem. Okay, good. So thank you very much for watching Facebook, Instagram, wherever you were, on whichever platform. What will appear in the link on, or the comment section on any of the platforms that you've been watching on, you'll have links to these books, and in addition to that, you'll see a link that can give you a free consultation with one of our staff if you're interested in finding out more about the many different aspects of motivation that L. Ron Hubbard has written about. That consultation is no obligation. You don't have to buy anything at all, but just to find out more information on where you're currently at, because each personal situation is different. You might be at a point where you already know the difference of all your goals and you've got them already sorted out. So you might not be at this point 0, kind of where I started. You might be further along, or you've really got some goals and you're experiencing a lot of happiness, but you need to motivate yourself in other ways. So that consultation will allow you to speak to one of our staff that has knowledge of all the different books that L. Ron Hubbard has written and which one might be appropriate for you. And even there are some courses that can be done online, and some of them are free. So go ahead, register for a consultation, find out what information that L. Ron Hubbard has written. And like I said, it's a very logically structured, massive body of knowledge that will help you orient yourself in a well, let's say a codified way on what stage level that you're at and help you ascend all the way through to get maximum motivation for yourself, rather than wandering around the massive field of confusing or often confusing YouTube and online content that one book picks this section, another book picks that section, and you've got to try and integrate it yourself. L. Ron Hubbard has codified it, so I hope you're interested. Join me tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. We'll be doing another webinar again on the subject of motivation. So please, any questions or anything you'd like me to deal with in future webinars on the subject of motivation, put them in the comments. Send through anything you like to let me know what you thought as well. That'd be great to hear from you. But otherwise, I see nothing else coming back from Zoom or the other platforms with my host Michelle there. So, Sinead for today. We'll see you next time.